Good morning. Welcome to Pittsburgh. As Dawn said, Pittsburgh is a remarkable story. In 1983, we had hit rock bottom. Our unemployment rate in the region was between 18 and 20%. 50,000 people a year were leaving Pittsburgh. Until recently in Detroit, no American city had seen the exodus that we had. Between 70 and 90, almost 500,000 people left the region. That's why there are so many Pittsburgh Steelers fans in your cities all over the country. They didn't, you know, when Pittsburgh plays in Jacksonville or Houston, the commentators always mention how many Pittsburgh fans follow the team. They don't realize they moved there 30 years ago because they couldn't find jobs here. And every time I speak in a different city and I ask people who's from Pittsburgh originally, I say, you're our failures. We couldn't give you a reason to stay in Pittsburgh. You left because you couldn't see a future here. That was the challenge we had about how do we reverse what was this unbelievably painful trend of decline. The story in Pittsburgh, too, were always the last one out, shut the lights off. And the other was, you know, you want to be in Pittsburgh when the world ends. You know why? Because you have 10 more years to live. We changed very slowly here. I was becoming mayor in 1994 at a time when that trend was continuing. We were still losing 50,000 people a year from the region, and there was not a lot of investment. And frankly, we made a decision that we didn't want to manage decline anymore. We were declining well. We looked pretty good as a city, but we were nevertheless declining. And so we made some fundamental decisions. And these decisions I can talk about. Let me just tell you, they were hugely controversial. And that's that. The Chamber of Commerce conversation is we all got together and we collaborated. Don't believe it. This happens because a group of strategic partners make a decision they're going to change behavior. I see this happening in a lot of cities. The cities continue to decline, and they continue to do the same thing they've been doing. You don't change trends that way. We made a fundamental decision that we needed to get money in a flat broke city. We needed to get land control, and we needed to get development capacity all in one place, and needed to be able to make deals. And so we diverted $6 million a year out of a difficult operating budget to finance a $60 million development fund, which we called the Pittsburgh Development Fund. And we put it in the Urban Redevelopment Authority so that our city council couldn't divide it up into pieces in each of their districts. We wanted to use it for catalytic purposes. You know, my opponent, when I ran, would show pictures of vacant property and say the mayor wasted our money buying this land when we could have hired more police. So when cities all across the world, and when I talk to them and I say you need to focus on how do you invest in the future, they say, but we don't have any money. And I ask them what their budget is. And their budget's like Pittsburgh's maybe $500 million or $1 billion. And I say, you're lying to me, you have money. It's about what your priorities are. And sure, you need to make sure people are safe and the roads are being paved, and if you get snow, that the snow gets off the street. But you also need to take resources and invest in the future if you're going to change trends. And that's a difficult thing for leaders to do, because there's huge risk involved in investing in the future. And so when I hear people talk about collaboration and the process that comes with all that, it's important, but I often see it as an excuse for not making decisions. It is, in some ways, we have too much democracy in many places. And I say that because there's a balance between involving in collaboration and leadership. And if you're going to change fundamentally the direction of things, there needs to be some leadership. So we created a development fund of $60 million that we didn't have to rely on the federal government or the state government or foundations, as important as they are as partners, to get things done. The second thing we did is we went out and bought 1,500 acres of steel mills. Some of you might have seen some of those steel mills that we redeveloped. They were sitting there reminding us every day of our decline and the situation we were in. And we bought, if you know where Southside Works are, a 250-acre slag dump that's now Somerset and Frick Park. We bought the old Sears building in a neighborhood of East Liberty that was a very blighted neighborhood. We bought property across the city because we believed that we could create value from that, what was seen as liability. And the third piece is how do you make deals? How do you get people to share your dream, who are willing to invest with you in markets that didn't look clear? You know, when you go to a developer and say, we have a 150-acre steel mill site, we'd like you to think about building new housing and retail on that, they'd look at you and think, it's a lot easier to buy a farm 30 miles north of Pittsburgh and do the same kind of investment with far less risk. So how do you entice them into doing that? And that was the big challenge, is to get people to share the dream of what we wanted to do. And what I learned about that as mayor is that you want to attract really smart, ethical people that are willing to take risk, that are willing to look at things in a different kind of way. And we built a team of people to do that. The other piece of it was that we created a wonderful partnership that has, I think, one of Pittsburgh's big strengths that Don alluded to with the Allegheny Conference. You're going to hear from Rick. This is a partnership that I have found is largely unique in America, with few cities having the kind of close, an organization like the Allegheny Conference composed of major business leaders, that is a very important piece of the partnership and conversation. That is also true of the foundations. Pittsburgh is blessed with a large foundation community that was an integral part of how to shape the future. And finally, there is the neighborhood leaders. There are neighborhood leaders who understand how to move forward and how you partner with them. And you're going to hear from Stanley Lowe, who wore a number of hats in this city. But one is a neighborhood leader that understood how to form a partnership with government and the foundations to turn a neighborhood around, and how to be a worthy adversary when they weren't doing the right thing. So the challenge really is every city I see is like a jigsaw puzzle, both in its people and its opportunity. And the question of how you put that puzzle together, how you bring the right people together in a strategic partnership, and how you shape a vision that strategic partnership can pursue. That's really always the challenge. And what I heard as mayor, and all the time, every time you suggested something new, we were going to do something on that old steel mill site or work in that neighborhood, there are going to be 100 people giving you a different reason to do something. And you got to listen to them, but at the end of the day, so often people paralyze themselves into doing nothing because they can't get a decision made. Somebody needs to be the grown-up in the room to make that decision. What Pittsburgh had is that we had grown-ups willing to make serious decisions to move this city forward. And the results are pretty remarkable. Thank you.